The rain hammered against the windshield of Hannah Collins' Honda Civic with relentless fury, each drop merging into streams that blurred the Seattle streets into watercolor smudges of neon and shadow. Her wipers worked overtime, their rhythmic squeak punctuating the exhaustion that settled deep into her bones. 27 years old, and some nights she felt twice that age. Hannah gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles pale against the worn leather cover she'd added 2 years ago, when the original had cracked. The digital clock on her dashboard read 11:47 p.m., glowing an aggressive green that seemed to mock her fatigue. Another 12-hour shift at Seattle General Hospital completed. Another day of holding hands, monitoring vitals, administering medications, and offering comfort to people whose names she'd remember long after they forgot hers. That was the reality of being a nurse. You became a temporary angel in people's worst moments, then faded into memory as they healed and moved on with their lives. The streets of Seattle's industrial district stretched before her, largely abandoned at this hour. Hannah had taken this route home for 3 years now, ever since she'd moved into her small apartment in Capitol Hill. It shaved off 10 minutes compared to the highway, and those 10 minutes mattered when all she wanted was to collapse into bed and silence the alarm that would scream at her in exactly 6.5 hours. Her headlights carved through the darkness, illuminating the skeletal frames of warehouses and shipping facilities that lined this forgotten corridor of the city. Rain pooled in potholes, reflecting streetlights like scattered coins. The radio hummed quietly, some late-night talk show host discussing the upcoming mayoral election, but Hannah wasn't listening. Her mind replayed the evening's cases. Mrs. Patterson's vitals finally stabilizing after her cardiac episode, little Timothy Chen's terrified eyes as she'd prepared his IV line, the teenager who'd come in after a car accident, crying for his mother. She rubbed her eyes with one hand, careful to keep her attention on the road. Coffee. She needed coffee. Or maybe just sleep. Definitely sleep. That's when her headlights caught something unusual. At first, Hannah thought it was debris, maybe trash bags dumped illegally along the roadside. But as her car approached, the shape clarified into something that made her heart lurch violently against her ribs. A person. Someone was lying on the side of the road, partially obscured by the curtain of rain, motionless against the wet pavement. "Oh God," Hannah whispered, her foot instinctively moving to the brake. Every rational thought in her mind screamed caution. This was Seattle's industrial district past midnight. This could be anything. A trap, a setup, something dangerous she should drive past and report to the authorities. Her phone sat in the cup holder ready to dial 911. But Hannah's hands were already turning the wheel, pulling her car to the shoulder. Her hazard lights blinked to life, casting rhythmic orange warnings into the rain-soaked darkness. Because beneath the fear and the exhaustion, and the very reasonable voice telling her to call for help and wait, Hannah was a nurse. And nurses didn't drive past people who needed help. She grabbed her phone anyway, keeping it clutched in one hand as she pushed open her car door. The rain immediately assaulted her, soaking through her scrubs within seconds. The cold shocked her system awake, washing away the fog of fatigue. "Hello?" Hannah called out, her voice nearly lost in the storm. "Can you hear me?" No response. She approached carefully, every muscle tensed, ready to run back to her car if this situation turned dangerous. The figure lay face down, one arm extended as if reaching for something. Dark clothes, completely soaked. Male, she thought, based on the build. Broad shoulders, tall frame. Hannah knelt beside him, rain streaming down her face, and gently touched his shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" A groan, soft, pained, but alive. Relief and renewed concern flooded through her simultaneously. She carefully rolled him onto his back, and her breath caught. Even unconscious, even with rain streaming down his face and blood, there was definitely blood staining his shirt. The man was striking. Strong jawline, dark hair plastered to his forehead, maybe mid-30s. His skin was pale, too pale, and when Hannah's trained eyes scanned his body, she found the source of the blood. His left side, just below his ribs. His shirt was torn and saturated with a dark stain that rain couldn't wash away fast enough. This wasn't a simple injury, this was serious. Hannah's nurse training kicked in, overriding everything else. She pressed her fingers to his neck, feeling for a pulse. There, steady, but weak. His breathing was shallow. He was going into shock. She should call 911 right now. This man needed an ambulance, needed emergency services, needed a trauma team. Her finger hovered over the emergency call button on her phone. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way his hand suddenly gripped her wrist, weak but urgent. Maybe it was how his eyes fluttered open for just a moment, dark and desperate, and he whispered a single word, "Please." Or maybe it was the sound of a car engine in the distance growing closer, and the way this man's entire body tensed with fear despite his weakened state. Hannah made a decision that would change everything. "Can you stand?" she asked urgently. "Can you get to my car?" He nodded, barely perceptible, and Hannah slid her arm under his shoulders. He was heavy, solid muscle, dead weight, but adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. Together they staggered toward her Honda, rain pounding down on them, his blood smearing against her already ruined scrubs. She practically poured him into her back seat, his head lolling against the door. No time for seatbelts. Hannah slammed the door, raced around to the driver's side, and threw the car into gear. Her tires spun briefly on the wet pavement before catching, and she accelerated away from the scene, just as headlights appeared in her rearview mirror. A dark SUV moving slowly, searchingly. Hannah's heart hammered. What had she just done? She took a sharp turn onto a side street, then another, weaving through the industrial maze until she was confident no one was following. Only then did she allow herself to glance in the rearview mirror at her unexpected passenger. He was still conscious, barely, his hand pressed against his wounded side, his jaw clenched against obvious pain. "Stay with me," Hannah said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I'm taking you somewhere safe, just stay awake." "Who?" His voice was rough, strained. "Who are you?" "Someone who apparently can't mind her own business," Hannah replied, taking another turn toward Capitol Hill. "I'm a nurse, you're injured. That's all that matters right now." He didn't respond, but she saw him nod slightly in the mirror. The drive to her apartment building took 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. Hannah kept checking the mirror, watching for the SUV, but the streets remained clear. Rain continued its assault, and somewhere distant, thunder rumbled a warning she was too committed to heed. Her apartment building was a modest 3-story structure tucked between a coffee shop and a vintage bookstore, the kind of neighborhood that prided itself on being eclectic and artistic. She parked in the back lot as close to the rear entrance as possible. "We're here," she announced, killing the engine. "Can you walk?" "Have to," he muttered, and she heard him moving, struggling. Hannah grabbed her purse and phone, then opened his door. Together they repeated the awkward dance from the roadside, his arm over her shoulders, her arm around his waist, both of them soaked and shivering as they stumbled toward the building. The back entrance, thank God, was deserted. Hannah's apartment was on the second floor and the elevator was broken. Of course it was. So they tackled the stairs one agonizing step at a time. By the time they reached her door, both were breathing hard, and the man's weight had increased as his strength faded. Hannah's hands shook as she unlocked her door and they tumbled inside together, barely maintaining balance. She kicked the door closed and guided him toward her couch, a second-hand sofa she'd bought from IKEA 4 years ago, already worn but comfortable. He collapsed onto it with a pained exhale, his eyes closing. "No," Hannah said sharply, turning on lights, flooding her small apartment with brightness. "Stay awake. You might have a concussion." Eyes open. His eyes cracked open, and for the first time, she saw their color, dark brown, almost black, with flecks of amber that caught the light. Even clouded with pain, they were intense, assessing. "Bossy," he murmured. "Occupational hazard," Hannah replied, already moving toward her bathroom. "Don't move. Don't you dare pass out on me." Her apartment was small but organized, a reflection of her personality. Living room and kitchen blended into one modest space, a hallway leading to her bedroom and bathroom. Medical textbooks lined a small shelf, plants hung by the window, and photos of her younger brother Jake smiled from frames on the wall. This stranger was now bleeding on her couch, and somehow, that seemed perfectly normal in this surreal moment. Hannah grabbed her personal first aid kit, more extensive than most people's thanks to her profession, and returned to find him still conscious, still watching her with those intense eyes. "I need to see the injury," she said, setting the kit on her coffee table. "Your shirt needs to come off." He nodded, reaching for the buttons, but his hands fumbled weakly. Without hesitation, Hannah brushed his hands aside and unbuttoned his shirt herself, professional detachment firmly in place. Except it wavered slightly when she pushed the fabric aside. The man was built like someone who took physical fitness seriously. Defined muscles, broad chest, evidence of a lifestyle that demanded strength. But it was the injury that captured her attention. A deep laceration ran along his left side, just below the ribs. clean edges. This wasn't from an accident. Someone had done this to him deliberately. Hannah's hands stilled for just a moment as the reality crashed over her. This man hadn't been in a random accident. Someone had hurt him, badly, and she had brought him into her home. "I know what you're thinking," he said quietly, and she met his gaze. "You're wondering what kind of trouble you've gotten yourself into." "The thought crossed my mind," Hannah admitted, reaching for antiseptic. "This is going to hurt." "Can't hurt worse than getting it," he replied, and there was dark humor in his voice. Hannah cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency, noting its depth. He needed stitches. It was too deep for butterfly bandages alone. Fortunately, she kept supplies from her hospital's discontinued materials, sutures included. "You should be in a hospital," she said as she threaded the needle. "Can't. That's not a medical recommendation. It's reality." Hannah began stitching, her movements precise despite the surreal circumstances. He tensed but didn't cry out, his jaw clenched, fingers gripping the couch cushion. "What's your name?" Hannah asked, partly to distract him, partly because she realized she was performing emergency medicine on a complete stranger in her apartment. He was quiet for a long moment. "Alex." "Okay, Alex. I'm Hannah." She pulled another stitch through. "Want to tell me how you ended up on the side of the road with an injury like this? Wrong place, wrong time." "That's a convenient non-answer. It's the only one I can give you." Hannah finished the stitches, 12 in total, and applied bandaging. She checked his other vitals. Pupils equal and reactive. No signs of head trauma beyond a bruise forming on his temple. Breathing improving now that the immediate crisis had passed. "You're lucky," she said, sitting back on her heels. "Few inches to the right and this would have been much worse." "Luck," Alex repeated, as if tasting an unfamiliar word. "Is that what we're calling it?" Hannah stood disposing of bloody materials in a plastic bag she'd seal and take out tomorrow. Her scrubs were ruined, stained with rain and blood. Her practical side mourned the loss. Scrubs were expensive. "You should rest," she told him, avoiding his probing gaze. "I'll get you water and something for the pain. Standard over-the-counter stuff, it's all I have here." "You've done enough," Alex said, and there was something in his voice. Gratitude mixed with regret. "More than enough. More than you should have." "Well, I did it anyway," Hannah replied, moving to her kitchen. "So now you're stuck being my patient for the night." She filled a glass with water and shook out 2 tablets from a bottle of standard pain relief medication, returning to find Alex attempting to sit up straighter. He winced but managed it, accepting the water and medication with a nod of thanks. "Where will you go?" Hannah asked. "In the morning, I mean. You obviously can't stay here indefinitely, but you also can't exactly go running around Seattle with fresh stitches." Alex studied her, and Hannah felt the weight of that gaze. Calculating, intelligent, seeing more than she wanted him to see. "I have people," he said finally. "I can make a call in the morning. They'll pick me up. People who won't ask questions about your injury. People who already know the answers." Hannah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how cold she was in her wet scrubs. How bizarre this entire situation had become. She should be scared. She should be demanding answers. She should be calling the police. Instead, she was standing in her living room at midnight, having just stitched up a mysterious stranger who'd probably been involved in something she really didn't want to know about. "There's a blanket in the closet by the bathroom," she said finally. "I'll get you a pillow. The couch isn't comfortable, but it'll work for tonight." "Hannah," Alex said, stopping her as she turned toward the hallway. She looked back at him. "Thank you, truly. You saved my life tonight." "I'm a nurse," Hannah replied, throat suddenly tight. "It's what I do." "No," Alex said quietly. "What you did tonight was extraordinary, and I won't forget it." Hannah didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply nodded and disappeared into the hallway. She retrieved the spare blanket and pillow from her closet, hands moving on autopilot while her mind spun with questions she was afraid to ask. When she returned, Alex had reclined against the couch, his eyes already heavy with exhaustion and the medication beginning to take effect. Hannah set the pillow and blanket within reach. "Call if you need anything," she said. "I'm a light sleeper. Occupational hazard. If you feel dizzy, nauseous, or if the pain gets worse, wake me immediately." "Understood, Nurse Collins," he murmured, and there was the ghost of a smile on his lips. Hannah hesitated at the entrance to her hallway. "How did you know my last name?" Alex's eyes opened fully, meeting hers. "Your badge. It's clipped to your scrubs." She glanced down. He was right. Her hospital ID badge still hung from her pocket, her full name and photo clearly visible. Of course. Nothing mysterious about that. Right, she said, feeling foolish. Good night, Alex. Good night, Hannah. She retreated to her bedroom, closing the door but not locking it. What would be the point now? Her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like something from a medical drama. Hair plastered to her head, mascara smudged beneath her eyes, blood staining her scrubs. Hannah peeled off the ruined clothes, showered quickly under water as hot as she could stand, and changed into soft pajamas. But sleep, when she finally crawled into bed, didn't come easily. She lay in the darkness listening to the rain continue its assault on her windows and tried to process the evening. Who was Alex really? What had happened to him? And what would happen in the morning when he called his people? More importantly, had anyone seen her take him? That SUV on the road? Had it been looking for him? Questions spiraled, but exhaustion eventually won. Hannah's eyes grew heavy. Her breathing slowed and she drifted into an uneasy sleep populated by dreams of dark eyes and blood-stained rain. Somewhere in the apartment, Alex lay awake despite the pain medication, his hand resting over Hannah's careful stitchwork. His phone, waterlogged but functional, sat in his pocket. He should call Marcus. He should activate emergency protocols. He should ensure his people knew he was alive. But for now, in this small apartment that smelled like lavender and belonging, Alex simply existed in the strange peace of being somewhere the violence couldn't reach. At least not yet. He studied the photos on Hannah's wall. A young man, clearly her brother based on the resemblance, his graduation photo prominent. No pictures of parents, no romantic partner, just her and the brother, and shelves of medical books that spoke of dedication and sacrifice. This woman had saved him without knowing who he was, without asking for anything in return, despite obvious danger. Alex closed his eyes, but sleep remained elusive, because he knew something Hannah didn't yet understand, something that would become clear in the harsh light of morning. By helping him tonight, by bringing him into her home and healing his wounds, Hannah Collins had painted a target on her own back. The Volkov family didn't forgive witnesses. They didn't leave loose ends. And Alex had just made this compassionate, dedicated nurse into the newest piece on a very dangerous chessboard. He would protect her. That was decided the moment she'd knelt beside him in the rain. But protection came at a cost, and Alex wasn't sure Hannah would want to pay it when she understood what being connected to him truly meant. The rain continued its percussion against the windows, and somewhere in the city, people who wanted Alexander Romano eliminated were realizing they'd lost his trail. They'd be looking, searching, and eventually, they'd find connections they could exploit. Alex's hand tightened into a fist against his injured side. He'd been careless tonight, desperate, and that desperation had drawn an innocent person into his world. He would fix this. He had to. But as the medication finally pulled him toward unconscious rest, Alex's last thought was of Hannah's eyes, green and concerned, looking at him like he was a person rather than a monster. It had been a very long time since anyone had looked at Alexander Romano that way. Morning came too quickly. Hannah's alarm shrieked at 6:30, dragging her from dreams she couldn't quite remember, but left her with a sense of unease. She slapped at her phone until blessed silence returned, then lay in bed, staring at her ceiling. For a moment she wondered if last night had been an elaborate, stress-induced hallucination. Maybe she'd dreamed the whole thing. The man in the rain, the injury, bringing a stranger into her apartment. Then she heard movement in her living room. Hannah sat up, heart immediately racing. Right. Not a dream. Very, very real. She climbed out of bed, running fingers through her tangled hair, and padded barefoot to her bedroom door. Taking a breath, she opened it. The living room was empty. The blanket lay folded neatly on the couch, pillow placed precisely on top. The first aid kit had been packed away and returned to the coffee table. Everything was tidy, orderly, as if no one had been there at all, except for the faint smell of antiseptic that still lingered. And the note. Hannah saw it immediately. A piece of paper from her own notepad placed carefully on her kitchen counter, weighted down by her coffee mug so it wouldn't blow away. With trembling hands, she picked it up. The handwriting was strong, precise, each letter formed with deliberate care. Hannah, you saved my life last night. There aren't adequate words to express my gratitude, but please know it runs deeper than I can properly convey. I've left money in the envelope beneath this note, for your ruined scrubs, your medical supplies, and your time. Please accept it. I need you to understand something important. You're in danger now, though not from me. People who want to hurt me saw you help me last night. They will try to use you to get to me. I can't let that happen. You'll be protected starting today. You won't see them, but they'll be there, keeping you safe. I know this sounds insane. I know you have no reason to trust me, but please believe that I take your safety seriously. I'm sorry for bringing trouble to your door. You deserve better than being dragged into my world. But since I can't change what's happened, I'll do everything in my power to ensure you remain safe. They know about you now. I'm sorry. Don't try to find me. Don't ask questions. Just live your life, and know that you're being watched over. A.R. Hannah read the note 3 times, her hands shaking more with each pass. Danger. Protected. Watched over. What had she done? She noticed the envelope beneath where the note had been. Thick. Heavy. With numb fingers, Hannah opened it. Cash. $100 bills neatly stacked. She counted quickly. $5,000. Oh my God, Hannah whispered. This wasn't payment for medical supplies. This was... She didn't know what this was. She stumbled to her window, pulling aside the curtain to look down at the street. Morning light filtered through lingering rain clouds, casting everything in shades of gray. Capitol Hill was waking up, the coffee shop below opening its doors, early commuters walking past. And there, parked across the street where it definitely hadn't been yesterday, sat a black SUV. Dark windows, engine running, exhaust visible in the cool morning air. Just sitting there, watching. Hannah dropped the curtain, her heart pounding against her ribs so hard it hurt. What had she gotten herself into? Who was Alex really? And what did AR stand for? She looked at the note again, at the money, at her tidy apartment that showed no evidence of the night's chaos except for her bag of bloody medical waste that she needed to dispose of carefully. You're in danger now. They know about you now. Hannah pressed her hand against her mouth, fighting down panic that threatened to rise like bile. She was a nurse. She helped people. That's all she'd done. Helped someone who was hurt. How had that turned into this? But even as fear gripped her, another feeling stirred beneath it. Curiosity. And something else. A strange sense that last night had been a turning point. That her life had split into before and after the moment she'd pulled over in that rain-soaked industrial district. Hannah Collins had always played by the rules, had always colored inside the lines, had always done exactly what was expected of her. And now she was standing in her apartment with $5,000 in cash, a mysterious note, and a black SUV watching her building. She should call the police. That was the rational choice. Hannah picked up her phone, pulled up the keypad, and stared at the emergency numbers. Her finger hovered, but she didn't press call. Instead, she set the phone down, took a shaky breath, and made herself coffee. Because she had another 12-hour shift starting at noon, and the world didn't stop spinning just because everything had changed. As she measured coffee grounds with trembling hands, Hannah glanced once more at the note. A.R. Who are you, Alex? She whispered to her empty apartment. Outside, the SUV continued its vigil, and somewhere in Seattle, Alexander Romano was making arrangements to protect a woman who'd shown him kindness when she had no reason to. The pieces were moving into place. The game had begun, and Hannah Collins didn't even know she was playing yet. The hospital cafeteria hummed with its usual lunchtime chaos, doctors arguing about treatment protocols, nurses swapping shift stories, administrative staff complaining about insurance paperwork. Hannah sat alone at a corner table, her turkey sandwich untouched, her coffee growing cold. 5 days had passed since that rainy night. 5 days of hypervigilance, of checking over her shoulder, of seeing threats in every shadow. The black SUV remained her constant companion. Different vehicles now. She'd noticed that on day 3. Sometimes a dark sedan, sometimes a gray truck, once even a motorcycle that maintained careful distance, but always there, always watching. Hannah had tried to convince herself she was imagining things, that the stress and lack of sleep were making her paranoid. But every morning when she left her apartment, there they were. Every evening when she returned home, they followed at a discreet distance. Whoever Alex, A.R., whoever he really was, he'd been serious about protection. Earth to Hannah, a voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Maria Rodriguez slid into the seat across from her, her own lunch tray clattering against the table. Maria was Hannah's closest friend at Seattle General, a fellow nurse with 15 years of experience, sharp wit, and an uncanny ability to read people. You've been staring at that sandwich for 10 minutes, Maria continued, her dark eyes concerned. You feeling okay? You're not getting sick, are you? Because if you are, you need to go home. We can't afford to be short-staffed this week. I'm fine, Hannah said automatically, picking up her sandwich to prove the point. She took a bite she didn't taste. "You're a terrible liar," Maria observed, stealing a chip from Hannah's plate. "You've been weird all week, distracted, jumping at shadows. What's going on?" Hannah wanted to tell her. God, she wanted to tell someone. But what would she even say? "Oh, I picked up a mysterious injured stranger last night, brought him to my apartment, stitched him up, and now I'm being followed by people in black cars who are apparently protecting me from other dangerous people I didn't know existed." Yeah, that would go over well. "Just tired," Hannah said instead. "Jake's been stressing about his finals, calling me at weird hours. You know how he gets." It wasn't entirely a lie. Her younger brother had called twice this week, though Hannah had been too distracted to give him her full attention. Guilt added itself to the growing collection of uncomfortable emotions she'd been carrying. Maria studied her for a long moment, clearly not buying it but also knowing when to let something drop. "Well, whatever it is, you need to take care of yourself. You're no good to your patients if you're running on empty." "Yes, Mom," Hannah replied with a weak smile. "I'm serious, Chica. You've got that look, the one people get when they're carrying something heavy and trying to pretend it weighs nothing." Maria stood, gathering her tray. "I'm here if you need to talk. About anything. No judgment." "I know," Hannah said, and meant it. "Thank you." After Maria left, Hannah forced herself to finish her sandwich. She had 3 more hours left in her shift, and she needed to focus. Her patients deserved her full attention, not this fractured version of herself that kept looking at exits and analyzing strangers' faces for signs of threat. The afternoon passed in a blur of routine tasks, checking vitals, administering medications, updating charts, offering comfort. Hannah moved through it all with practiced efficiency, but her mind remained elsewhere. At 4:30, during a rare quiet moment at the nurse's station, Hannah made a decision. She pulled out her phone and opened a search browser. Her fingers hovered over the keys, hesitating. This was probably a bad idea. Alex, AR, had specifically told her not to ask questions, not to try to find him. But Hannah had never been good at accepting things without understanding them. She typed carefully, "AR Seattle Organized Crime." The results that loaded made her stomach drop. Alexander Romano, age 35, alleged head of the Romano crime family, one of Seattle's oldest and most influential organized networks. Multiple investigations, no convictions. Suspected involvement in various illegal operations, though nothing had ever been proven in court. Hannah's hands shook as she scrolled through article after article. Photos showed a man in expensive suits entering courthouses, always surrounded by lawyers. Even in the grainy newspaper images, she recognized him. The strong jawline, the intense eyes, the commanding presence. The man she'd stitched up on her couch was a crime boss. She'd brought a crime boss into her apartment. Hannah set her phone down, feeling like the floor had dropped out from beneath her. What had she been thinking? How had she not realized? Except, she had realized, hadn't she? Some part of her had known from the moment she saw that injury that Alex wasn't an innocent victim of random violence. She'd known and helped him anyway. Nurse Collins? Hannah jumped, nearly dropping her phone. Dr. Patterson stood at the nurse's station, chart in hand, eyebrow raised at her startled reaction. "Sorry," Hannah said quickly, pocketing her phone. "Yes, Dr. Patterson? Mrs. Chen in 304 is requesting pain medication. Can you handle that?" "Of course." Right away, Hannah escaped gratefully into the familiar routine of patient care, but the knowledge she'd uncovered sat in her chest like a stone. Alexander Romano, Mafia boss, the man whose blood had stained her couch, whose pain she'd eased, who'd looked at her with gratitude and something else she hadn't been able to identify. Danger. The word from his note took on new, terrifying dimensions. Hannah's shift ended at 7. She gathered her things from her locker, her movements mechanical, her mind still processing. The parking garage where hospital staff parked stretched beneath the building, concrete and fluorescent lights and the echo of footsteps. She'd parked on level 3 this morning, and now Hannah walked toward her Honda with her keys already in hand, her senses on high alert in a way they'd never been before that rainy night. The garage was mostly empty at this hour, the day shift having left, the night shift not yet arrived in force. Hannah's footsteps echoed too loudly. A door slammed somewhere in the distance, making her flinch. She was halfway to her car when she noticed him, a man standing near the concrete pillar closest to her Honda, tall, wearing a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, just standing there, watching. Hannah's heart rate spiked. Was this one of Alex's people? Or someone else? She slowed her pace, trying to decide whether to turn around and go back inside. But that felt ridiculous. She was in a hospital parking garage, not a dark alley, and she couldn't live her life in fear every time she saw a stranger. Hannah straightened her spine and continued walking, grip tightening on her keys. She'd position them between her fingers if needed, the way her mother had taught her years ago. The man pushed off from the pillar as she approached. He was older than she'd initially thought, maybe 50, with graying hair and a face that had seen its share of hard living. "Hannah Collins?" he said, and his voice was rough, like gravel. Hannah stopped walking, every muscle tensed. "Who's asking?" "Someone with a message for you." He took a step closer, and Hannah took a matching step back. "About the man you helped last week, Alexander Romano." "I don't know what you're talking about," Hannah said, though her racing heart called her a liar. The man smiled, and it wasn't friendly. "Pretty nurse picks up injured man on the side of the road, takes him home, patches him up. That man happens to be Alexander Romano, who certain people have been looking for." Another step closer. "Those certain people are very interested in talking to you, Miss Collins." Hannah's thumb found her phone in her pocket, ready to call for help. "I'm in a hospital. There are security cameras everywhere. Whatever you're thinking of doing, I'm not going to hurt you," the man interrupted, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace that didn't match the threat in his eyes. "I'm just delivering a message. You've become interesting to some powerful people who don't like Alexander Romano very much." "I have no connection to anyone," Hannah said firmly, though her voice shook slightly. "I helped someone who was hurt. That's all." "That's all," the man echoed mockingly. "Honey, you picked a side the moment you took him home, and now—" He didn't finish the sentence, because suddenly he was looking past Hannah, his expression shifting from threatening to wary. Hannah risked a glance over her shoulder and saw another man approaching. Younger, built like a fighter, moving with purpose and barely contained violence. "Time for you to leave," the newcomer said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge of danger. The gray-haired man's jaw tightened. "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is. Walk away now, while you still can." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other, some silent communication passing between them that Hannah didn't understand. Then the gray-haired man smiled that unpleasant smile again, nodded once to Hannah, and walked toward the garage exit. Hannah stood frozen, her heart hammering, as the younger man turned to face her. He was maybe 30, with dark hair cut short, a scar visible along his left cheekbone, and eyes that assessed her with professional detachment. "You're Marcus," Hannah said, though she didn't know how she knew. He nodded once. "Boss told me you were smart. I'm going to follow you home. Don't be alarmed by the escort." "Too late for that," Hannah muttered, but she was grateful for the protection, even if the need for it terrified her. "Who was that man?" "Nobody you need to worry about anymore," Marcus replied. "But Miss Collins, you need to be more careful. Don't work late shifts alone. Don't go anywhere isolated. If you see anything suspicious, call this number immediately." He handed her a business card, blank except for a phone number printed in simple black text. "I didn't ask for this," Hannah said, staring at the card. "I just tried to help someone." "I know," Marcus said, and there was something almost sympathetic in his expression. "But that's done now. You're in it whether you wanted to be or not. Best thing you can do is stay smart and stay safe." He walked her to her car, waited while she got in and locked the doors, then headed toward a motorcycle parked 2 spaces away. True to his word, he followed her all the way home, maintaining a careful distance but always visible in her rearview mirror. Hannah's hands shook the entire drive. Her apartment felt different now, less like a sanctuary and more like a cage. Hannah locked the door, engaged the deadbolt, and stood in her living room trying to steady her breathing. This was insane. This entire situation was completely insane. She looked at the business card Marcus had given her, at the phone number that represented a direct line to people who existed in a world she'd only seen in movies. Hannah had always been practical, logical, someone who made careful decisions and thought through consequences. But that night in the rain, she'd acted on instinct and emotion, and now she was paying the price. Her phone rang, making her jump. Jake's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," Hannah answered, grateful for the distraction of normalcy. "Hey yourself," her brother's voice came through, young and energetic. "You sound weird. Everything okay?" "Long shift," Hannah said, which was true enough. "How are finals going?" "Brutal, but I'm surviving. Actually, I was thinking about coming home this weekend. Haven't seen you in a month and I'm feeling guilty about only calling when I need something." Panic flared in Hannah's chest. No. Silence on the other end. Then, okay, that was a weird reaction. You don't want to see me? Of course I want to see you, Hannah said quickly, trying to moderate her tone. There's something going around the hospital. Respiratory thing, I don't want you catching it before finals. Another pause. Jake knew her too well. Hannah, what's really going on? Nothing. I promise. Just stressed about work. The lies were getting easier, which terrified her. Let's plan something for after your finals, okay? Maybe I can take a few days off and we can go somewhere. Seattle's been rainy anyway. Yeah, okay, Jake said, though he didn't sound convinced. But Hannah, you know you can tell me anything, right? I'm not a kid anymore. I know, Hannah said softly. I love you, Jake. Love you too, weirdo. Get some sleep. After they hung up, Hannah sat on her couch, the same couch where Alex had bled and recovered, and let herself feel the full weight of her situation. She couldn't tell Jake, couldn't risk him getting involved, getting curious, getting hurt, which meant she was alone in this. Except she wasn't, was she? She had Marcus, and whoever else was watching. Alex's people keeping her safe from threats she was just beginning to understand existed. Hannah pulled out her laptop and did something she knew was probably foolish. She searched for more information about Alexander Romano. Articles spanning 15 years told a story of a family legacy. Romano's uncle, Vincent Romano, had been a prominent figure in Seattle's underworld before his passing 5 years ago. Alexander had taken over the family operations at 30, and by all accounts had been ruthlessly efficient at consolidating power. But there were other stories too. Donations to children's hospitals, anonymous but traced back to Romano shell companies. Protection of certain neighborhoods from more violent criminal elements. A code of conduct that, while still illegal, seemed to operate on some twisted sense of honor. Hannah read about investigations that went nowhere, witnesses who disappeared or recanted statements, federal prosecutors who could never quite make their cases stick. Alexander Romano was either very lucky or very careful, probably both. The more she read, the more complex the picture became. This wasn't a simple story of good versus bad. This was gray areas and moral ambiguity and choices made in impossible circumstances. Finally, exhausted and overwhelmed, Hannah closed her laptop and prepared for bed. But sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of parking garages and threatening smiles and dark eyes that promised protection she wasn't sure she wanted. The next 3 days followed a similar pattern. Hannah went to work, stayed hyper-aware of her surroundings, and tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Marcus or others from his team, she'd spotted at least 3 different people rotating surveillance, remained her constant shadows. The envelope of money sat in her drawer, untouched. Hannah couldn't bring herself to spend it, couldn't decide if keeping it made her complicit in something she didn't want to examine too closely. On the 8th day since that rainy night, something changed. Hannah was restocking supplies in the pediatric wing, her favorite rotation despite how emotionally challenging it could be. When her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number, she almost didn't answer, but something made her step into an empty supply room and accept the call. Miss Collins. The voice was smooth, cultured, unmistakably Alex. I hope I'm not interrupting. Hannah's heart lurched. She hadn't heard his voice since that night, though he'd been a constant presence in her thoughts. You're calling me, she said, which was stating the obvious, but her brain had apparently short-circuited. You said not to try to find you. I said you shouldn't try to find me. I didn't say I wouldn't contact you. There was a hint of amusement in his tone. How are you? How am I? Hannah repeated incredulously. I'm being followed everywhere. A man confronted me in a parking garage. I found out you're... She lowered her voice. I know who you are now. Alexander Romano. Ah, he said quietly. You researched. Of course I researched. You left me a note saying I was in danger. What did you expect? Fair point. A pause. I'm sorry, Hannah, for all of it. You deserve better than being dragged into this. Then why did you call? Hannah asked, surprised by the anger in her voice. To apologize? To check that your protection detail is doing their job? What do you want from me? I wanted to hear your voice, Alex said simply. I wanted to know you were okay, beyond the reports Marcus gives me. Something in Hannah's chest twisted at that admission. I'm fine. Terrified and confused, but fine. You handled the situation with Pavel well. In the parking garage. Pavel, Hannah repeated. The man who threatened me has a name. Had. He's been dealt with. Hannah didn't want to know what dealt with meant in Alexander Romano's world. Your man Marcus scared him off. Marcus is good at his job. Another pause, and when Alex spoke again, his voice had softened. I know this is overwhelming. I know you didn't ask for any of this, but I need you to trust that I'm doing everything I can to keep you safe. Why? Hannah asked. Why does my safety matter so much to you? You don't know me. You saved my life, Alex replied. In my world, that creates a debt, an obligation. But beyond that, he trailed off, seeming to search for words. You could have driven past me that night. Most people would have, but you didn't. You helped someone despite the risk, despite having every reason not to. That means something. Hannah closed her eyes, leaning against the supply room wall. I'm a nurse. Helping people is what I do. You're more than your profession, Alex said quietly. You're someone who sees a person in need and acts. That's rare, especially in my experience. Your experience with people who want to hurt you, Hannah countered. Yes. The honesty in that single word hit harder than elaborate explanations would have. This was Alex's reality. Violence and threat and people who saw him as either an asset or an enemy. Never just a person. I should go, Hannah said, though she found herself reluctant to end the call. I'm at work. Of course, Hannah. His voice stopped her before she could disconnect. If you need anything, if you're scared or confused or just need to talk to someone who understands what you're dealing with, use the number Marcus gave you, day or night. Okay, Hannah whispered. And Hannah, thank you for that night, for everything. The call ended, leaving Hannah alone in the supply room with her racing thoughts and a feeling she couldn't quite name. She should hate Alexander Romano. He was everything she'd been raised to view as wrong. Someone who operated outside the law, who existed in a world of violence and moral compromise. But when she thought of him, she didn't see a crime boss. She saw the man on her couch, wounded and vulnerable, thanking her with genuine gratitude. She heard the voice on the phone, checking that she was okay, offering support despite the chaos surrounding them both. Hannah didn't know what to do with these contradictions. She returned to work, but Alex's words echoed through her mind for the rest of her shift. And that night, alone in her apartment with shadows watching her building, Hannah pulled out the business card Marcus had given her and added the number to her phone, just in case. Just because knowing she had that connection, that lifeline to someone who understood the impossible situation she'd stumbled into, made the fear a little more manageable. The city outside her window glittered with lights, and somewhere in that vast urban landscape, Alexander Romano was managing his empire and carrying the weight of protecting a woman who'd shown him unexpected kindness. Hannah fell asleep with her phone on her nightstand. The number saved, the connection established. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new complications. But tonight, somehow, she felt a little less alone. Hannah stood at her apartment door staring at the gap where it hung slightly ajar. Her hand trembled as she gripped her keys, the metal edges biting into her palm. It was nearly 11 p.m. She'd worked a double shift covering for a sick colleague, and all she wanted was to collapse into bed. But her door was open. She knew she'd locked it this morning. She always locked it, had become obsessive about it since that night. The deadbolt, the chain, everything secured. Yet now, in the dim hallway light, she could see the door standing open just an inch. Darkness beyond. Hannah's first instinct was to run. Her second was to call the police. Her third was to look at her phone and scroll to the number Marcus had given her. She chose the third option. The call connected before the first ring finished. Miss Collins. Marcus answered immediately. What's wrong? My apartment door is open, Hannah whispered, backing away toward the stairwell. I locked it this morning. I know I locked it. Where are you right now? In the hallway. I haven't gone inside. Good. Don't. Stay where you are. I'm 3 minutes away. The line stayed connected, and Hannah could hear movement on Marcus's end. An engine starting. Traffic sounds. She pressed herself against the wall opposite her apartment door, watching it like it might attack her. Talk to me, Marcus said. Keep me updated on anything you see or hear. Nothing, Hannah replied, her voice shaking. It's just open, dark inside. Anyone else in the hallway with you? Hannah looked both directions. The corridor stretched empty in both directions, fluorescent lights humming overhead. No, it's just me. Okay. I need you to go back downstairs. Wait in the lobby where there are people. I'll be there in 2 minutes. Hannah wanted to argue, wanted to know what was happening, but the professional calm in Marcus's voice convinced her to obey. She hurried toward the stairwell, her footsteps echoing too loudly, and descended to the lobby. Mrs. Chen from the first floor sat reading a magazine near the mailboxes. The sight of her, so normal, so ordinary, made Hannah's fear feel both more real and more absurd. "Hannah, dear," Mrs. Chen looked up with a smile. "Working late again?" "Yes," Hannah managed, trying to keep her voice steady. "You know how it is." She positioned herself where she could see the front entrance, phone still pressed to her ear, Marcus's presence on the other end, an anchor in the chaos. True to his word, Marcus appeared exactly 2 minutes later, moving through the entrance with purpose. He wore dark jeans and a leather jacket, and something about the way he moved made Hannah think of coiled violence waiting to be released. He crossed directly to her. "Stay here," he said quietly, then headed for the stairs. Hannah watched him disappear, feeling helpless and frightened and angry at herself for both. Mrs. Chen had returned to her magazine, oblivious to the drama unfolding. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Then Marcus reappeared, his expression grim. "Someone's been inside," he said without preamble. "Nothing's damaged, nothing's taken that I can see, but someone was definitely there." "How do you know?" Hannah asked, though she believed him. "Professional tells. Small things moved. Your laptop was closed when you left, yes?" Hannah nodded. "It's open now. Coffee table books rearranged. Someone searched your place trying to make it look like they didn't." Hannah felt violation wash over her like ice water. Her home, her safe space, had been invaded. What were they looking for? Information, connections to the boss, anything they could use. Marcus studied her carefully. "You need to come with me. You can't stay here tonight." "Where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't find you." Hannah's mind raced. This was insane. This was her life spiraling completely out of her control. But what choice did she have? "Let me pack a bag," she said. Marcus shook his head. "We'll get you whatever you need. Right now we leave. Now." The firmness in his voice left no room for argument. Hannah followed him out to his motorcycle, a sleek black machine that looked expensive and dangerous, and accepted the helmet he handed her. "Hold on tight," Marcus instructed, "and trust me." Hannah climbed on behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist, and tried not to think about how surreal this moment was. 10 days ago, she'd been living a normal, predictable life. Now she was fleeing her own apartment on the back of a motorcycle driven by a man who worked for a crime boss. They drove through Seattle's nighttime streets, the city lights blurring past. Marcus took several turns that seemed designed to confuse any potential followers, doubling back and changing directions until Hannah lost all sense of where they were headed. Finally, they pulled into an underground parking garage attached to a high-rise building in downtown Seattle. Marcus parked, helped Hannah off the motorcycle, and led her to a private elevator that required a key card to access. The elevator climbed silently, and Hannah watched the numbers increase. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Finally, it stopped at the penthouse level. The doors opened directly into an apartment that made Hannah's breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Seattle's skyline. The city spread out below like scattered diamonds. The space was modern and minimalist. Leather furniture, dark wood, expensive art on the walls. And standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, was Alexander Romano. He turned as they entered, and Hannah's heart did something complicated in her chest. He looked different than that night. Healthy, strong, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. But his eyes were the same. Intense, intelligent, and currently focused entirely on her. "Hannah," he said, and his voice carried relief and concern in equal measure. "Are you all right?" "No," Hannah replied honestly, finding her voice. "I'm not all right. Someone broke into my home. I can't stay in my own apartment. My entire life has been turned upside down, so no, I'm definitely not all right." Marcus cleared his throat. "I'll be outside if you need me, boss." He disappeared back into the elevator, leaving Hannah alone with Alex. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Hannah felt the weight of everything unsaid between them. The violence of his world, the innocence of hers, the impossible collision that had brought them together. "I'm sorry," Alex said finally, moving closer but maintaining careful distance. "I knew this might happen. I tried to prevent it. But the Volkov family—" "The who?" Hannah interrupted. "Sit down." Alex gestured to the leather sofa. "Please, you deserve explanations. Real ones this time." Hannah sat, her body exhausted from the double shift and the adrenaline crash. Alex took a seat across from her, not on the couch but in a chair, as if recognizing she needed space. "The Volkov family," he began, "is another organization in Seattle. Russian roots, very traditional in their methods, and currently my primary competition for territory and influence. Territory, Hannah repeated, like in the movies. A ghost of a smile touched Alex's lips. Unfortunately, yes, like in the movies, except the consequences are very real. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that someone in my organization was feeding information to the Volkovs. I went to confront them personally, which was foolish, I know that now, and walked into a trap. The night I found you, Hannah said. Yes, they wanted to send a message to my people, wanted to eliminate me and create chaos in my organization. His jaw tightened. They would have succeeded if you hadn't come along. Hannah processed this. So when they saw me help you, they saw an opportunity, a weakness they could exploit. You became leverage, someone they could use to get to me. Alex's eyes held hers. Hannah, I need you to understand something. In my world, showing care for someone makes them a target. By protecting you, I'm confirming their suspicion that you matter to me. But if I don't protect you, they'll hurt you to prove a point. This is insane, Hannah whispered. I know. I'm a nurse. I help people. That's all I did. I helped someone who was hurt. I know, Alex repeated, and there was pain in his voice now. You did nothing wrong. You did something remarkable, actually. But my world doesn't care about intentions. It only cares about leverage and power and control. Hannah stood, moving to the windows, needing to put distance between them while she thought. The city sprawled below, millions of people living normal lives, unaware of the shadowy world operating beneath the surface. Tell me everything, she said without turning around. No more secrets, no more cryptic warnings. If I'm in this, I deserve to know exactly what this is. She heard Alex stand, heard him approach until he stood beside her at the window, both of them looking out at Seattle's glittering landscape. My uncle raised me, Alex began, his voice quiet. Vincent Romano. My parents passed when I was 15. Car accident. Nothing suspicious, just terrible timing. Vincent took me in, gave me a home, and eventually brought me into the family business. The business being organized crime, Hannah said. Yes. By the time I understood what that really meant, I was already too deep to walk away. Vincent was good to me, treated me like a son, and when he passed 5 years ago, leadership fell to me. Alex's reflection in the window showed strain. I've tried to change things, move the family toward legitimate operations, reduce the violence, establish codes of conduct, but change is slow, and there are people, like the Volkovs, who see any attempt at reform as weakness. So you're trapped, Hannah said, finally understanding. In a life you didn't entirely choose, trying to make the best of impossible circumstances. That's a generous interpretation. Is it wrong? Alex was quiet for a moment. No, it's not wrong. But it doesn't absolve me of responsibility for the choices I've made, the things I've done. Hannah turned to face him. The man who threatened me in the parking garage. Marcus said he was dealt with. What does that mean? It means he won't threaten you again, Alex replied carefully. Did you have him? Hannah couldn't finish the sentence. No, Alex said firmly. Pavel works for the Volkovs. He was warned, strongly, to stay away from you. He made the smart choice to listen. Hannah studied his face, trying to read truth in his expression. I don't know if I believe you. I wouldn't lie to you, Hannah. Not about this. Alex held her gaze. I won't pretend my world isn't violent. It is. People get hurt. Lines get crossed. But I have rules, and one of them is that innocent people don't become collateral damage if I can prevent it. And you get to decide who's innocent? No. That's the problem, isn't it? I'm making judgment calls that affect people's lives, and I have no right to that power. But someone has to make those calls in my position, and I try to make them as ethically as possible within an inherently unethical system. The honesty in his words struck Hannah. He wasn't justifying his choices or pretending they were right. He was acknowledging the moral complexity, the impossible compromises. Why are you telling me all this? Hannah asked. Because you deserve to know what you're caught up in, and because... Alex hesitated, seeming to struggle with the words. Because I've never met anyone like you. Someone who looked at me that night and saw a person in pain, not a criminal or a boss or a tool to be used, just someone who needed help. That's rare in my experience. Precious even. Hannah's heart beat faster. Alex, I know this is complicated. I know you probably hate me for dragging you into this mess, but I need you to believe that keeping you safe is my priority, whatever it takes. How long? Hannah asked. How long do I have to live like this? Looking over my shoulder, afraid to go home, hiding in your penthouse? I'm working on a solution, Alex said. The FBI has been investigating the Volkovs for years. I've been in quiet negotiations with them, offering information in exchange for immunity for certain members of my organization, myself included. If I can help them build a case against the Volkovs, if I can remove that threat entirely, then I'm safe, Hannah finished. Then everyone's safer, including you. Hannah moved back to the couch, suddenly exhausted. This is too much. I can't process all of this. Alex joined her, maintaining respectful distance. You can stay here as long as you need. The guest room is yours. Marcus and others will provide security. You're safe here. I promise you that. Safe, Hannah repeated. I don't even know what that word means anymore. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of revelation settling between them. Finally, Hannah spoke again. That night, she said softly, when I was stitching you up, you watched me the whole time. I remember thinking you were analyzing me, figuring out what kind of person I was. I was, Alex admitted, and I was thinking that if I survived, I needed to make sure you were protected. Even then, before I knew you, I knew you were someone worth protecting. Hannah turned to look at him. Why? Because you represent everything my world tries to destroy. Compassion, selflessness, genuine goodness. And I've spent enough time in darkness to recognize light when I see it. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning Hannah wasn't ready to examine. She felt drawn to him in ways that terrified her. Not just physical attraction, though that was undeniably present, but something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. I should sleep, Hannah said, breaking the moment. It's been a very long day. Alex stood immediately. Of course, the guest room is down the hall, second door on the right. There are clothes in the closet. My assistant keeps emergency supplies. Nothing will fit perfectly, but it'll work for tonight. Tomorrow we'll get you whatever you need. Hannah stood, wavering slightly from exhaustion. Alex reached out instinctively to steady her, his hand on her elbow, and the touch sent electricity through her entire arm. Their eyes met, and Hannah saw her own confusion and attraction reflected in his dark gaze. Thank you, she whispered, for being honest, for protecting me. Even though this is all insane. You're welcome, Alex replied. And Hannah, I meant what I said in my note. I'm sorry this happened to you. You deserve better. Maybe, Hannah said, but maybe some things happen for reasons we don't understand yet. She left him standing by the windows and found the guest room, a beautiful space with soft bedding and that same incredible city view. Clothes in the closet as promised. Toiletries in the bathroom. Hannah changed into borrowed pajamas that smelled faintly of expensive detergent and crawled into bed. The sheets were soft, the mattress perfect, but sleep didn't come easily. Her mind replayed everything Alex had told her. The Volkov family, the FBI negotiations, his attempts to reform his organization, his trapped circumstances, and underneath it all, the way he'd looked at her, like she was precious, like she mattered. Hannah didn't know what to do with any of this. Didn't know how to reconcile the attraction she felt with the reality of who Alex was and what he represented. But as she finally drifted toward sleep, one thought remained clear. Her life had changed irrevocably that rainy night. There was no going back to who she'd been before. She could only move forward into whatever came next. Outside her door, in the main living space, Alex stood at the windows and made phone calls into the night, coordinating protection, planning strategy, and trying to find a way to end this situation that wouldn't destroy the woman sleeping in his guest room. A woman who'd saved him and in doing so had somehow saved something else, a part of himself he'd thought long dead, the part that still believed in goodness. 1 week had passed since Hannah moved into Alex's penthouse. 7 days of strange normalcy in the most abnormal circumstances. She still went to work. Marcus drove her every morning in a nondescript sedan, waited in the parking garage, then drove her back each evening. Her coworkers had stopped asking questions after she'd explained she was having car trouble and getting rides from a friend. The lie came easier than it should have. Tonight, Hannah stood in Alex's kitchen making coffee, wearing one of the tailored outfits his assistant had provided. The clothes fit perfectly now. Someone had clearly taken her measurements without asking. Another reminder of how completely her life had been taken over. You're up late, Alex's voice came from behind her. Hannah turned to find him emerging from his office, tie loosened, looking exhausted. It was nearly midnight and she'd been unable to sleep. Couldn't stop thinking, she admitted, pouring a second cup of coffee. Want some? Please. They stood in the kitchen together, the city glowing beyond the windows, and Hannah felt the tension that had been building between them all week. The accidental touches when they passed in the hallway, the lingering glances over morning coffee, the awareness that hummed between them constantly. "Agent Chen contacted me today," Alex said quietly. "The FBI. They're ready to move against the Volkovs. They have enough evidence, but they want my testimony to seal the case." Hannah's heart leaped. "That's good news, isn't it? That means this could be over? Maybe. If everything goes perfectly. If the Volkovs don't retaliate first." Alex set down his coffee cup, moving closer. "Hannah, there's something I need to tell you. Something that changes things." "What?" "Your brother, Jake. The Volkovs found out about him. They know he's your weakness." Fear crashed through Hannah like ice water. No, Alex. You promised he wouldn't be involved." "I know. I'm sorry. My people are already moving to protect him. Marcus is driving to his campus tonight. But Hannah, we need to tell him the truth. He needs to understand the danger." Hannah's hands shook. "This is my fault. I brought this to him by helping you." "No," Alex said firmly, reaching for her hands. "This is my fault, all of it. But I swear to you I will protect him, whatever it takes." The touch of his hands steadied her, and Hannah looked up into his eyes. "Why do you care so much? About me? About Jake? We're nothing to you." "You're not nothing," Alex said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're everything that's good in a world that tried to make me forget goodness exists. And He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "You what?" Hannah whispered. "I care about you. More than I should. More than is wise or safe or reasonable." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I should let you go. Back to your life. Away from all this. But I can't. God help me, Hannah. I can't." "I don't want you to," Hannah heard herself say. The admission hung between them, heavy with consequences neither had fully considered. Then Alex was pulling her closer, and Hannah was rising on her toes, and their lips met in a kiss that felt like falling and flying simultaneously. It was desperate and careful all at once. Alex's hand cradling the back of her head, Hannah's fingers gripping his shirt, both of them pouring weeks of tension and fear and impossible attraction into this single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alex rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates everything," he murmured. "I know," Hannah replied. "You should hate me." "I know that too." Before either could say more, the elevator dinged. Marcus's emergency code. He burst into the penthouse, his face grim. "Boss," he said urgently. "It's Jake. The Volkovs got to him first. They're holding him at the warehouse on Pier 27. They're demanding a meeting. You for the kid." Hannah's world tilted. "No. Oh God, no." Alex's entire demeanor changed. The vulnerability gone, replaced by cold calculation. "How many?" "At least 6 we can see. Dmitry Volkov himself is there. He wants to end this tonight." "Then we end it," Alex said, already moving toward his office. "Call Chen. Tell her it's happening now." "Hannah," he turned back to her. "I'm coming with you," Hannah said, her voice stronger than she felt. "He's my brother." "Hannah, it's too dangerous." "I'm coming," she repeated. "You don't get to protect me from this, not when it's Jake." Alex studied her face, then nodded once. "Okay, but you stay in the car with Marcus until I say otherwise. Understood?" Hannah nodded, fear and determination warring inside her. Within minutes, they were moving. 3 cars full of Alex's people, coordinating with FBI agents, racing through Seattle's nighttime streets toward the waterfront. Hannah sat in the back of Marcus's car, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Alex was in the lead vehicle, already planning, strategizing, preparing for whatever came next. "He'll get your brother back," Marcus said quietly. "The boss doesn't fail when it matters." Hannah hoped he was right, because if anything happened to Jake, if her brother paid the price for her compassion that rainy night, she didn't know how she'd survive it. The warehouse district loomed ahead, dark and industrial and threatening. Hannah's phone buzzed. A text from Alex. "Stay safe. Trust me. This ends tonight." She looked out at the approaching confrontation and sent a silent prayer into the universe. For Jake's safety, for Alex's plan to work, for all of them to survive whatever came next. The cars pulled into position, and Hannah's heart hammered as Alex emerged, walking toward the warehouse with the confidence of someone who'd faced danger countless times before. But this time was different. This time, people Hannah loved were at risk. And as the warehouse doors opened to reveal her terrified brother and the men holding him, Hannah understood that some lines, once crossed, changed everything forever. The warehouse reeked of salt water and rust. Hannah watched from Marcus's car as Alex approached the entrance, his silhouette backlit by the harsh industrial lights. Her brother Jake stood in the center of the space, surrounded by 6 men, looking terrified, but unharmed. "I can't just sit here," Hannah whispered, her hand on the door handle. Marcus's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "You promised the boss you'd wait." That was before I saw Jake's face. The standoff seemed frozen in time, Alex moving forward with calculated calm, the Volkov men positioned strategically, and somewhere in the shadows, FBI agents waiting for their moment. Then everything erupted at once. Dmitry Volkov stepped into the light, older than Hannah expected, with silver hair and cold eyes. "Romano, you brought friends. How disappointing." "Let the boy go," Alex said, his voice carrying across the space. "This is between us. The boy is leverage. His sister saved your life. Now she'll watch you give yours for his." But Alex smiled, sharp and dangerous. "Actually, Dmitry, you're surrounded. Federal agents have this building locked down. It's over." "FBI!" The shout came from multiple directions as agents flooded in, weapons drawn, cutting off escape routes. Chaos exploded. Hannah saw one of Volkov's men grab Jake, saw her brother struggle, saw Alex move with surprising speed toward them. Gunfire cracked. Sharp, terrifying reports that made Hannah scream. Marcus was already moving, pulling Hannah from the car despite her protests, using his body as a shield as they advanced toward the warehouse. Through the confusion, Hannah saw Alex reach Jake, saw him push her brother toward safety. Then she saw Alex stumble, his hand pressing against his side, the same side she'd stitched weeks ago. "No!" Hannah broke free from Marcus, running toward Alex with every ounce of her nurse training overriding her fear. The FBI had Volkov and his men on the ground, the immediate danger neutralized, but Alex was bleeding, sinking to his knees. Hannah reached him, her hands immediately assessing the injury. "You opened your stitches, Alex, stay with me." "Jake," he managed. "Is Jake—" "I'm okay." Her brother appeared, shaken but safe, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. "Hannah, what is happening?" "Later," Hannah said, already applying pressure to Alex's wound. "Marcus, I need the first aid kit from the car now." The next 30 minutes blurred into controlled chaos. Hannah worked on Alex with steady hands while FBI agents processed the scene and paramedics arrived. She refused to let them take over, her training and her connection to this man making her the best person for the job. "You're going to be fine," she told Alex, meeting his eyes. "I didn't save you that night just to lose you now." "Bossy nurse," he murmured, and despite everything, he smiled. The ambulance ride to Seattle General felt surreal. Hannah holding Alex's hand, Jake sitting across from them in shock, and Marcus following in his car. In the emergency room, Hannah's co-workers stared as she accompanied the patient into the treatment area, but she ignored their questions. She assisted the trauma surgeon, providing critical information about Alex's previous injury, and stayed by his side through every moment. Hours later, Alex rested in a private room, sedated but stable. Hannah sat in the chair beside his bed, exhausted and emotionally drained. Jake had been checked out, given a statement to the FBI, and now sat on the window ledge processing everything. "So," Jake said finally, "you've been living with a mob boss who you saved from bleeding out on the side of the road, and the Russian Mafia kidnapped me because of it. Did I get that right?" Hannah couldn't help but laugh, slightly hysterical but genuine. "That's basically it, yes. You're insane, you know that." "I know." Jake studied her for a long moment, then looked at Alex's unconscious form. "He took a hit protecting me. Reopened his injury, getting me to safety." "He did," Hannah confirmed quietly. "So maybe he's not completely terrible." "No," Hannah agreed. "Maybe not." Agent Chen appeared in the doorway, her expression satisfied. "The Volkovs are going away for a long time. Mr. Romano's testimony, combined with our evidence, sealed multiple cases. He's kept his end of our agreement." She looked at Hannah. "You're safe now, both of you. The threat is eliminated." Relief washed through Hannah so powerfully she nearly wept. "Thank you." After Chen left, Jake stood. "I'm going to find some terrible hospital coffee and give you 2 privacy. When he wakes up, tell him thanks for saving my life." "I will," Hannah promised. Alone with Alex, Hannah took his hand, careful of the IV line, and allowed herself to feel everything she'd been holding back. Fear, relief, love. Yes, love, impossible and complicated and undeniable. "You're going to have to stop getting injured," she whispered. "I'm running out of thread to stitch you with." 3 months later, Hannah smiled as Alex's car pulled up outside Seattle General. right on schedule. No bodyguards visible, though she suspected Marcus wasn't far away. Alex had been transitioning the family business toward legitimate operations, working with authorities, building something new from the ashes of his uncle's empire. It was slow work, complicated and sometimes frustrating, but Alex approached it with the same determination he brought to everything else. "How was your shift?" he asked as Hannah slid into the passenger seat. "Long. Mrs. Patterson asked about you again. She still thinks you're too handsome to be real." "Mrs. Patterson has excellent taste." Hannah laughed, leaning over to kiss him, a simple gesture that still felt miraculous. "Dinner at that Italian place Jake recommended? Perfect." As they drove through Seattle's streets, Hannah reflected on how drastically her life had changed. Her apartment had been secured, upgraded with better locks and a security system Alex had insisted on. Jake had returned to college, though he called twice as often now, and Hannah had found herself building a life that included both her nursing career and her relationship with Alex. It wasn't simple. People judged when they learned about Alex's past. Her co-workers whispered. But Hannah had learned that life rarely fit into neat categories of right and wrong. Sometimes it was messy and complicated, and you had to choose what mattered most. That evening, over wine and pasta, Alex reached across the table to take Hannah's hand. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small box. Hannah's heart jumped. "Alex, it's not that," he said quickly, though his smile suggested he knew exactly what she'd been thinking. "Not yet, but this is important." Inside the box was a key. "It's to my apartment," Alex explained. "I want you there, not as someone hiding or being protected, but as someone who belongs there, with me." Hannah turned the key over in her palm, feeling its weight, understanding its symbolism. "This is a big step. I know, and if you're not ready, I'm ready," Hannah interrupted, meeting his eyes. "I've been ready for a while. I was just waiting for you to ask." Alex's smile was brilliant and genuine, so different from the guarded man she'd found bleeding in the rain. "So a nurse and a reformed criminal. What kind of story is that?" "The kind where she saved him twice," Hannah replied softly. "Once from his wounds, once from himself." They kissed across the table, ignoring the other diners, lost in their own world of second chances and impossible love. Outside, Seattle continued its endless rhythm, and somewhere in the city, lives intersected in ways both ordinary and extraordinary. Hannah had learned that saving someone could mean more than healing their body. Sometimes it meant helping them find their way back to being human. And sometimes, in the process of saving someone else, you saved yourself too.